as we welcome in Cam Robinson, the Director of Content and Film Scouting for Elite Prospects. And a huge thank you to Elite Prospects and Patrick Korn, because I woke up this morning to my 2025 Elite Prospects Draft Guide via email at a mere 1,800 pages, Cam.
Keeping it short, keeping it brief this year for you. Yeah, you're on that illustrious influencer list that I put together, so you get a free copy there. Spread that around a little bit.
You've really outdone yourself. I mean, War and Peace is jealous of the length you guys put together this year. Holy cow, the deep dive.
Yes, we feel like we've maybe got to the point now where we're above some NHL teams' depth that they go into.
Yeah, you mentioned last week.
And we've heard from teams the same thing. They're like, we don't get those type of reports from some of our guys, so that does feel good.
Hey, I annually get the Baseball America Prospect Handbook. Now, I think it's only like 300-400 pages, Cam. But one of the testimonials on the back, and it's true, I've asked this around, every MLB GM has a copy of this book in their office just as a quick reference guide anytime a prospect comes up in trade negotiations. And I have a feeling the EP Rinkside Draft Guide is the same for NHL general managers as they're preparing for the draft. Speaking of, you were at the Combine in Buffalo this past weekend.
Yeah.
Dundee S, Jim Rutherford, and Patrick Allvin, where were they?
Where were they indeed? I guess looking for practice facilities, in Surrey or East Van or something like that. No, it was noteworthy. I got in on Wednesday. A lot of the teams get in on Sunday or Monday. And so, by the time I get there on Wednesday, some guys had already left. And so I was like, maybe they were here and gone. And so I checked around and no, they weren't there. Cammy Granato was there. Todd Harvey was there. I know they took Braden Coots out for dinner, with some of the scouts, but no Patrick Allvin, no Jim Rutherford. Definitely was an anomaly compared to the vast majority of organizations who did have their GM as well as their director of scouting and often a couple of assistant GMs there and player personnel. They had all sorts, some teams had 20 plus guys there. So people there. So it was definitely noteworthy, and it's telling with how they are valuing this pick coming up here, the 15th overall pick. To me, it's a pretty straight line to get to that they're probably going to trade it if they're not that interested in sitting down with these players. But at the same time, this was the last opportunity to be face-to-face with all the other executives, right? They were all in the Marriott together. They spent a week in the hotel in the lobby and, chit-chatting, and, we're all watching the games together at the pub downstairs. And, that opportunity, and guys were, even at the Combine when they're watching testing, it was kind of like the draft floor a little bit where you're watching, here's one executive walking it over and they're, they're exchanging banter or whatever, friendly conversation, but rumors were swirling. Guys were trying to get, the groundwork laid for some potential deals. And so you think that even if you weren't going to hold on to that pick, you'd want to be in the same room to discuss potential moves to get rid of that pick and to help bolster your team in the near term.
Unless, of course, you already have a trade lined up and it just doesn't matter, I suppose.
I suppose. But if,
Do you have some news for us, Patrick?
No,
okay.
That's one of the logic points. That is that they must have a deal on the table and they're waiting for the end of the call. I mean, whether that's true or not, it still seems very odd to me.
Yeah.
As even if you don't have a huge crew, because you don't need a huge crew, you can do whatever you want. It just, as you said, Cam, it's very strange just from a sort of an intelligence gathering standpoint. Can you just give us a sense of like what kind of team or what teams maybe otherwise wouldn't have had their GM there? I mean, as you said, it's not like every guy's there, but most of them are. Is it just like the two teams in the Stanley Cup final GMs aren't there, or who else might not be there?
Well, obviously they weren't there. I didn't, some teams that didn't have a first round pick. I didn't know that, I didn't see Vegas's GM.
Okay.
So, and those make sense, right? And same with like Vegas didn't take anybody out for dinner. It's like, yeah, well, we're not picking until day 2, and you just kind of let things happen. But like you said, an information gathering standpoint, it's very strange because some teams, and I fully asked them this, like, why did you interview this player? Why did you ask to have extra time with this player when they're not in your range? Like James Hagen sat down with 16 teams. It's like, good luck, right? But this is an opportunity for these teams to get to know this player a little bit better for the future, right? That information doesn't just go away in 2 weeks. You can have that in 2 years and 4 years when trade opportunities and signing opportunities happen. You want to have a book on these guys. Where did they start? Where are they at now? And so it's just, the more information, the better, as far as I'm concerned, and just open up all avenues to try to find somewhere where you can get an advantage on another team.
Well, and it goes beyond that, because Dreger joined the show yesterday and said somebody told him the combine in Buffalo is being referred to in some circles as Tamperfest, because that's where you get to start talking to the agents, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, about the pending UFAs that are coming up, because there's a big agent contingent there too, is there not, Cam?
Oh, absolutely, right. Like it's kind of like the meeting of the minds, right? Like the draft is always, it's like our winter meetings. We don't have that like baseball does, where everyone comes together for the draft. But the combine now, especially with the decentralized draft, became even more important for that regard. So yes, agents, all the reps were there, the advisors, whatever you want to call them, if the kids are in school, you know, the execs, the scouts, the media, like everybody's mitching and matching, and yeah, loads of stuff coming out of there for sure. Like nothing concrete, nothing's done yet, but you know, you can get to the point where it's like, yes, this player is definitely on the block, like a guy like Keandre Miller, right? You know, word around there is that Jonathan Taves, everybody's very interested. It really sounds like he's going to end up in Winnipeg. Like without it being done, it's like all signs kind of point to this. And even guys that are still playing, like a Sam Bennett, was a hot topic of discussion among teams and among agents and among the media about, you know, what's he looking at getting on the open market? What is Florida maybe interested in offering to retain him? Is he interested in playing in a Canadian team, or for a Canadian team? I'm told no. So lots of juicy little nuggets coming out of there.
You said the Canucks took Seattle Thunderbird centerman Braden Coots out for dinner. Do you know who else the Canucks spent time with?
That was the only one that I got confirmed that they requested and spent additional time with. Yeah, it was Coots. Okay,
you ranked him. EP ranks him 16th in the final rankings, so right there in the Canucks neighborhood. Any center iceman, give us the profile. What kind of player is he?
Yeah, really is a pacey kid, you know, really pushes the pace. He has good skating. Not the biggest guy, but he does like to get in and cause some disruption on the forecheck. He's intelligent. I'd say that he can flash some really high-end skill at times, but overall, I would say he's more likened to a player that you're going to envision playing in the middle of your lineup, the middle six center. Maybe has to ship over to the wing because of his size. But, you know, like a heady, intelligent guy who kind of maximizes the tools that he has to get the most out of him. I like him, and a good kid as well too. Someone who's a competitor and looking to get better and has leadership qualities as well.
Can I ask you about one more prospect in his ranking on the EP list?
Yeah,
I gotta say, I was stunned to see Swedish forward Anton Frondell down at number 13. I've seen him as high as number 3 on some other lists. So what are the holes we're picking apart? And do you think there's any world where he would be available at 15, or even available 10 to 15, where the Canucks might be able to jump up and get him?
No, he will not be available at that part of the draft. And so, you know, if you've been following our work all year, it's that we've been a little bit lower on Anton Frondell than the vast majority of public lists. But we are in line with several NHL teams that I've spoken to that do agree with where now that's not to say that all of them do, because there are a couple teams out there that have him as like the number 2 prospect in the draft and potentially the number 1 forward. So it's a discrepancy on the upside. So he's already a well-developed individual at 6'1", 205 already. Not a shredded 205, but he did perform very, very well in the aerobic fitness testing there. Like he was top in the VO2 max. He did really well in the Wingate, which is great. It shows that maybe there is another level of fitness for him coming to maturation in that regard. But it's, you know, he's a north-south player. He plays a heavy game. He has a really good shot, but the creativity, the high-end skill, the consistency over time, it's given us pause. My personal rankings will probably have him a little bit higher than that 13th overall, but it won't be pushing up into that 3 to 5 range that some lists have him. But I will say is that, you know, I talked to some people that he trains with in the summertime, and boy, oh boy, do they speak highly of this kid and his work ethic. And so that can often trump natural gifted skill in the long run too. So you don't want to bet against this kid, I'd say.
Well, looking forward to the draft here in a couple of weeks, and particularly if the Canucks do keep that 15th overall pick. But many suspect, including this one here, that it might already be packaged somewhere for that second line centerman or top 2 center that they're looking for. A new name has emerged here in the last week. William Carlson, the Vegas expansion hero once upon a time. You may remember 40 goals out of the chute for the expansion Golden Knights. The theory being that, Vegas may well again be big game hunting here and need to clear some cap space. William Carlson, what do you make of the player? What do you make of the fit? Would he be what the Vancouver Canucks need, Cam?
Need? I don't know about that. 32 years old. He's got 2 years at just a hair under $6 million per, right? He's one of the streakiest guys in the league. Like he either scores at like 18 or 20%, or he scores at like 6 or 7%, depending on the year. You'd probably get him reasonably cheap just because of, as you mentioned, is that they're looking to free up some space to go after, a Mitch Marner or someone like that. I don't hate it. I don't love it. He's coming off a 29-point season. It doesn't exactly scream upgrade for the team.
No.
I as a fallback option, maybe, but it definitely wouldn't be the number one pick for me if I was looking to bolster that 2C spot.
So you think his days as a 2C are behind him, or will soon be behind him?
I mean, I guess if you can catch him in one of his streaky years, he could go out and score 30 goals and 55 points for you. But it's like it's a big bet at his age to expect that moving forward.
What about the Boston centermen, Pavel Zacha and Morgan Geekie? Geekie is a RFA. Zacha is under contract for a couple more years at just under $5 million. We had heard Zacha tied to the Vancouver Canucks a couple of years ago when he was making his way from Jersey. What do you make of those two Boston centermen?
Yeah, Zach is interesting. He's good in the dot. He kills some penalties. He's basically a consistent, reasonable 50-point guy, which is what you're looking for from your second line center. He doesn't shoot much. He doesn't hit much. He doesn't score all that much, but he can set up plays. And he's not a small individual out there, so he takes up some good space. The age and the contract fit. I'm not as high on his ultimate upside as some people are. He's played a ton of top 6 minutes, even first line minutes in recent years too. But I think that is a better fit than a guy like William Carlson for Vancouver. It's someone who's under contract and is younger. And maybe if it works out well, you can extend him into his 30s too. And it's more of a long-term fit. Geekie, 27, like you said, coming off a career year though, clicked at 22%. Like that's not going to be, replicable. So again, not great in the draw, doesn't kill penalties, not a perfect fit there. And you're probably going to have to pay more to get him in trade and in value on the contract too. So again, not a perfect fit, but we're always looking for guys. And PJ, you and I were talking last week, and I mentioned, what about like Nick Schmaltz out of Utah? Someone that hasn't really been brought up. He's 29, he makes $5 million. He's only got one more year left. Does Utah go out and get themselves another center that they're like, okay, now we've got Cooley and this guy, is it James Haggins? Is it Brady Martin? Whatever long-term, is a guy like Nick Schmaltz expendable? He's a consistent 60-point guy, a real playmaker, offensive, can play some decent defense too. I have no idea if he's available. But I'm just trying to look outside the box for some options here.
Well, and part of the reason you brought him up was a spitballing, because we're trying to think, okay, if you're going to trade Thatcher Demko, where does he end up? And certainly Utah is a team that could probably use a goalie like Demko, assuming he's healthy. It was an interesting spitball, and certainly an interesting name, because it's in that range of the kind of number two they'd ideally like, the guy with a bit of size, bit of strength, bit of skill. Because I agree with your assessment on Zacha, like guy that, he shows up and he's around. He's clearly an NHL centerman, but he doesn't move the meter for you. It was, I remember it was Jim Benning was chasing after him, if I remember correctly. And it felt like a very Jim Benning kind of move. It was like, why do you love this guy so much? Like, I guess you saw him once. He must have played a great, but like the overall there is it's just not convincing to me as a guy that if you're really serious about trying to push your chips and moving your first round pick, as it sounds like they want to do, it doesn't feel like the kind of move. It feels like there's a better move to be had. And you're right, Schmaltz would be a much bigger move. Now, is he available? We don't know, but that's the kind of guy.
But they're looking for goaltending, and you're talking about two players in the final years of their contract. He's a right shot center too, Schmaltz. We should add. You're talking about two players in the final years of their contract before unrestricted free agency. The money almost matches up perfectly. They're just $850K apart. And Schmaltz has a 10-team no-trade list, so don't know if Vancouver's on that. What do you think, Cam? The makings of a Schmaltz-Demko deal there?
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like that's why I was just trying to find ideas that could make sense. Like I'm not even on team move Demko, to be honest with you, unless they feel like they can't retain him past this, or they're like injuries are going to be an issue forever here. But But if you are looking down that road, then yeah, I think that would be a nice trade up rather than going like 15th overall and Lekiramaki or Vylander or something like that and mortgaging some of your future, taking an asset off the roster right now that you have some depth in. You don't really want to lose Silovs for nothing on waivers or something like that in September. So it could fit. It could be a fit for both clubs.
Lastly, this guy dropped something in our pipe last week about Bowen Byram interest with the Vancouver Canucks, and Blake and I are like, boy, defense looks pretty good already. But Patrick brought up that the notion would be, if you're worried about losing Quinn Hughes, then you have another top 4 left side guy who's good with the puck. And then secondly, the whole notion of maybe just go out and try and win with the best defense core you could possibly assemble for next season and hope that they help you generate offense. What do you think of that philosophy?
I'm not completely against it. I've always liked Bo Byram. He's obviously a good player. He's a player who's been consistently looking for more. In Colorado, in Buffalo, he wants more responsibility. He wants more money. He wants more everything. I think it would fit in a vacuum for Vancouver in that regard, is that they could give him more, but it's like the left side is pretty jacked up on Vancouver already. Right. So it's like, so now obviously it's Pettersson who's back to the AHL, and like the fact that they didn't even paper him down for this run, which I, again, continue to think that was strange to not give him that experience. Because if he has to go play in the American League next year, it seems silly, but so it doesn't fit in their depth chart. But I do like that thinking, PJ, is that if you're going to lose Quinn, then you're like, hey, well, maybe we still have a top pairing left side D here in the pipeline, not even in the pipeline, just waiting in the wings, and it kind of pushes everybody back down. So yes, but the price to acquire him isn't going to be cheap to get Byron. And so they have holes that need to be filled, that they need to use their assets for. Vancouver doesn't have many assets to trade to get good players. So if you're going to use some of those to get another left shot D when you have one center, that'd be bold.
The one thing I've learned in this interview is that you guys talk offline. In fact,
believe it or not,
it's amazing the network that Patrick has that he speaks to on a daily. I'm forever amazed at you always come in. I was talking to so and so. I was talking to so and so. And now I know that Cam Robinson is on that.
Well,
list.
if you read, obviously,
it's a collab I can get behind.
You got to read more of my stories, because elite prospects Cam Robinson says appears very often.
Really,
very, very often.
Love to get
Cam Robinson. You may have heard is an essential source in this industry.
Just quickly, any other scuttlebutt you picked up at the combine that raised your eyebrows?
Well, I've been talking about Brady Martin is like, we talk about helium on this show. This kid's got a lot of juice. I will throw out this little tidbit too, is that, so Utah took him out to dinner. They loved him. Everybody loved him. He was the belle of the ball this week. And he's that smash mouth throwback player, great in front of the camera, great in the interviews, farm boy strength, got all that stuff going for him. But I did have it, and because I put it out there, is that Utah really likes him, and they could take him at 4. But I did have someone put a bug in my ear there last night to be like, watch out for a little bit of the smoke, because I'd also heard that Utah was open to moving that 4th overall pick, and I'd heard that a couple weeks ago too. Is that they might be inflating how much they love Brady Martin. So teams that are picking 5, 6, 7 that were hoping he was going to be there might be further inclined to jump up and be like, we want that 4th overall pick so we can get our guy, which is, I love that big brain thought if Bill Armstrong is pulling that off in Utah too. So it's something to watch.
Billy Armstrong.
Yeah, well,
go.
The weeks before the NFL draft, they call it lying season for a reason. Anyways, a few weeks until the draft. Cam will be riding with us weekly until then, and then from the draft floor. Sadly, no GMs, but then from the draft floor,
I'll be there.
Look for, exactly.
Yeah.
We have you. That's important. Thank you, sir. Until next week.
Okay, take care, boys.